I am so excited to have Jennifer in today's show. Jennifer, thank you so much for sharing your story with us.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
You bet. Let's go ahead and start with, just having you share your story, like what you taught and what led to your transition. You are specifically in the course called From Teacher to Instructional Designer. So I'm so excited to have you tell us all about that. But really, I'm also extremely excited to hear about the new job that you landed and everything with that. So tell us first about what you taught and
Sure.
your story with transitioning from teaching.
Yes. So I taught for the first 6 years of my career. I taught in Virginia. I taught fourth grade. And I love teaching fourth grade. I love teaching Virginia history. And so I taught there for 6 years. And then I met my husband, and he is actually from Indiana. So when we got married, he actually ended up getting a job in Indiana. So we got married, we moved to Indiana, and then I started teaching first grade in northern Indiana. So I taught first grade for 2 years here in Indiana. So I've taught for a total of 8 years. So that's kind of my teaching experience. And there are so many things that I loved about teaching. And I mean, the biggest thing is obviously the relationships that you build with your students and your colleagues, and just getting to see their aha moments and getting them excited about learning something that maybe they weren't that excited about to begin with. So that's kind of my teaching history.
And I'm right there with you about the best part being the people, and the relationships and those aha moments, definitely.
Yeah.
We relate.
Yeah. So then I taught for 2 years in Indiana, and then my husband actually got a new job. So we were going to need to move again about 3 hours away. So I knew that I was going to be needing to look for a new position again. And he found out in like end of February, first week of March, that he was going to be starting this new position. And so it was at that point that I knew, okay, I'm going to need to look for something in a new area. And, like I said, I've been teaching for 8 years. And so there were many times in those 8 years where I started to consider something else. I was really feeling stagnant in the classroom and feeling like I wanted more professional development. I wanted more opportunities for growth. And it's funny, like within my first 3 years of teaching, honestly, I was already feeling burnout. And so I already kind of had in my mind, like, I don't know if this is something I can do for the rest of my career.
Right.
Kind of like long are the days of someone going into teaching and teaching in the classroom for 30 years and retiring from it.
Yeah.
It just didn't seem sustainable.
And really, any profession, like people mix up their professions, it's a path and we just keep going forward, and the journey twists and winds, and awesome. Great.
Yeah, exactly. And I also knew that like we wanted to have kids in the future, and I wanted to be able to have like a more flexible career when we have kids. And so, throughout the years, I'd kind of occasionally searched for different careers that I could still do that were related to teaching, and nothing really ever stood out to me as something that it just didn't really interest me that much. Or interest me that much. So it wasn't until, we knew that we were going to be making this move that I started, kind of doing another search and thinking that, every time you move to a new school, like this is going to be a new school, it's going to be a new district, a new area, new principal, new teammates, probably a new grade. And so that's always very stressful and very time consuming to have to make that transition. So I knew that, we're moving again. I'm going to have to do this again. And honestly, like I want to find something that I'm a little bit more excited about right now, and something that has more professional growth. So I started thinking about this, like end of February, first week of March, and then and then we all go home and start teaching from home for the rest of the year. So with doing that, I actually found that there were a lot of things about teaching and doing distance learning that I did really love. Like,
Cool.
I really enjoyed taking the content that we learned in the classroom and turning it into online content and turning it into something that was actually engaging for my students and meaningful. Um,
And
and
what were
so,
some of the ways that you did that, or certain tools that you use, things that excited you the most?
well, we were primarily a Google Classroom school and district. So we started, we were doing everything in Google Classroom. So I would essentially, my team and I would make a Google slideshow every day, and we would have all the kids' lessons in the slideshow. But, we worked as a team to find all the different ways that we could make it interactive. So we added videos, we, recorded videos of ourselves teaching lessons. We created drag and drop features. We created, Google Forms for them to enter information. So we just did, all these different things, and what tried our best to incorporate as many engaging tools as we
And
could.
what did you love about that, or like how did it excite you?
I mean, I just loved that, like, we could take something that we'd been doing for years on paper in the classroom, and the fact that I was able to make it digital was exciting to me. And we got a lot of positive feedback from the parents and saying that, like, their kids loved it and they were engaged and they were excited to do it, which was not necessarily what we were hearing from from other friends or in other areas, that the kids were actually enjoying the distance learning. But we got a lot of positive feedback from it, and that's always exciting to know that
Absolutely.
they're engaged and they're enjoying it. So
I also really loved, being in the classroom and, well, while I was teaching, to create the content. I remember I had a student teacher for a while, and when she was doing her student teaching, I wasn't allowed to be in the classroom toward the end of it. She had to completely be doing everything independently. And that time that I had just to work on materials, like, I found a room in the classroom where no one else was, and I'd have no interruptions, and I just made, scope and sequence, and then these materials, and everything was clickable so that I could, as a teacher, I could access it anytime. I was doing
mhm.
instructional design things, and it was so much fun, even during
Yes.
my lunch break. So yeah, recognizing that that kind of stuff excited me was a
Yeah.
great cue or indicator of, preparing the learning materials, creating them, strategizing what to do, how to do this
Hmm.
effectively. Yeah, it's all good indicators. I'm so glad that you got to experience that with
Yeah.
everything. Yeah,
Yeah. I know it was
being
a
in
tough
certain distance.
experience for a lot of people, but I really felt like there was a lot that I did enjoy about it. So,
Awesome.
yeah. So then as the school year ended and I started again, I'm, thinking about the fall and what I'm going to do. I considered doing like an instructional technology position based on like how much I was really enjoying technology. And I had been doing one-on-one Zoom calls with colleagues and kind of walking them through some of the new technology and teaching them how to do things. So I liked that idea, but then again, I was just kind of doing random searches online and looking for other paths. And I came across instructional design, and I had never heard of it before. And so whatever it was, that first thing that I read about it, I thought, hey, this sounds like something I'm actually interested in. So I started, doing more digging and looking into it more, and just trying to learn as much about it as I could. And I was on YouTube one day watching videos of on different instructional design things, and there was one talking specifically about how you didn't necessarily need a master's degree to go into this. And I think that led to another video with you,
Oh,
where you were interviewing with a girl from Bell Vista Studios.
yes. Oh, good.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I watched that video, and you specifically as well talked about how you didn't necessarily need a master's to go into this. And then you specifically talked about how teachers would make great instructional designers. And so that's how I found you and your course. And so,
Great.
I kind of looked into that and thought, like, this is perfect. Like, I'm a teacher. I want to go into instructional design. Like, it was perfect. So I went ahead and signed up for your class. And again, like with your class and everything that I was learning, I just loved like everything about this new career path. I loved like how many options and opportunities it presented. Like there were options for full-time and part-time and contract and freelance and working at a corporation or ed tech or university. Like there were so many different avenues that you could take. And I felt like, that would be a really great kind of transition for our future and kind of the things that we want in the future. So those were all like the big reasons why I kind of wanted to make this switch to instructional design. So.
Oh, I love hearing that. I love that you came across that interview. That was so much fun. I'll link to that in the show notes for this episode
Yes.
too.
Yeah.
And she's so awesome. She's so fun to collaborate with. So great.
Yes.
And what you said about so many different opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
I am so grateful now that I have kids and that family life's different than it was a handful of years ago. I'm so grateful now that I made those not just changes but kind of developmental steps so that I do have more options, a lot more options now than I did then. So I'm so excited to hear about all of this. Okay, so you came across the course, you got into the course, you heard about some more opportunities and things like that are inside of the course. What are some of the things that you learned in the course that you felt like were the most beneficial, or aha things, any takeaways or highlights that you want to point out?
Well, I felt like every piece of the course was beneficial. So I felt like it was very well laid out. Like I felt like your videos, like everything that you said in your videos were like I was totally, into everything you were saying because you were a former teacher, like you were feeling all the things that I was feeling. And so it was super beneficial to kind of hear somebody else knowing that they had gone through that and they'd been successful kind of transitioning to something else. But just, it was beneficial. You took us through the ADDIE model, and it was super beneficial for you to, encourage us to start creating our own things and using the materials that you gave to actually be making instructional design pieces and using something that I could then put in my portfolio. So that was really beneficial. All the videos where you interviewed other people and they talked about their careers or showed us how to do something or use a tool, those were really beneficial. I think the most beneficial thing was the interview or the webinar with Angela, the professional resume writer.
Oh, excellent. I'm glad to hear that. She'll love
I
hearing
think,
that.
yes, I think that was one of the biggest improvements that I made was after watching that, completely revamping my resume. Because I started applying to jobs, before I even finished the course. And so I didn't feel like my resume or my cover letter or portfolio were all that great when I started applying, but I knew that, with our transition and moving, I had already decided I wanted to make this transition. So I was going to start applying and I was going to get a job in the fall.
Good for you. And I'm just going
Yes.
to point out for anyone listening, so the interview that Jennifer's referring to is with a certified professional resume writer named Angela. She's fantastic. And I have that interview inside of this course, but that interview is also available outside of this course. And what were some of the things that she taught in that interview, or how was it helpful? How did it help transform your resume?
She showed us specific examples and of resumes and from taking a teaching resume and turning it into an instructional design resume. But also the biggest thing was just showing us the specific places on your resume of like exactly where things are supposed to go and exactly what the layout is. And like, you do need to have this here and you need to have the dates on this side. And, it was very well laid out, and it just, like I said, I completely transformed my resume after watching that. So it was very specific of, exactly what you need your resume to look like and what people are looking for when they look at your resume.
Great.
So it was super beneficial.
I love that. I've heard that from so many teachers. And so if anyone is listening to this and wants that, you can get that at courses.teachertransition.com. And not only can they get that interview, but if you also want it, there are 3 different services that Angela offers for resume help, like different levels of help. and she and
Mhm.
her team can help anyone out. And those are available there for anyone that's listening to that. So great.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm
Yeah.
so glad that that was helpful. So then you're
Yeah.
applying to jobs. Let's talk a little bit about that and about the future opportunity that you've landed.
Uh-huh.
After taking the course and preparing your portfolio and your resume and all of this and seeing what instructional design really is and how to do it, um, were you applying at a lot of positions or being really selective and only applying at a few? How did it come about that you landed something? I know members of our course who are getting to that point of applying are going to be really excited to hear this.
Yeah. Well, it was definitely a process, like I said, because I did start applying so early and I felt like my, resume and cover letter and portfolio weren't super great at the beginning, even though I was applying. I applied to a lot of places. So I definitely put it out there to a lot of places. But it wasn't until maybe probably almost 2 months after I like the first application I submitted that I finally got a call for an interview. And so I think a big part of that was this process of like, during that time, I found new information. I revamped my resume. I, continuously was revamping the portfolio and creating things and putting things in the portfolio and taking things out that I didn't think were that great actually. And so it was definitely a process. So I think it was great that I went ahead and put everything out there in early. That kind of helped me just jump in. But certainly over time, I definitely improved things. And I think that definitely helped with getting interviews later.
Good.
um,
And with the position that you now have been hired in, and I know you're starting in a couple weeks, so I'm
uh-huh.
super excited to hear about that later as well. But
Yes.
tell us a little bit about that and how the interviews went and
Mm-hmm.
why. I know that they've said something specifically about you being a teacher and how that appeals to them. Tell us
Yes.
about that.
Yes. So, um, one of the biggest things that I also took away from the course was just networking, which is as a teacher is not really something that I was skilled in doing. Thankfully, my husband was, so he encouraged me and he gave me a lot of advice as well.
Excellent.
But I really I just started reaching out to anyone that I could who was in the field, and I started connecting with more people on LinkedIn who were in the field. I did a search for instructional designers in the area that I was moving to and just started connecting to them and saying like, hey, I'm trying to transition from teaching to instructional design, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on the job market or any advice you have about transitioning. And so many of them are like, they're incredible. They're wonderful. They respond right away and they're like, oh yeah, absolutely. And they tell me some things, or they're like, let's meet for coffee and talk about it. So
Great.
I mean, there was one girl who, she responded with a recorded video of the, personalized to me, and told me, 10 different things that I could do to help me.
Yeah, and that is the
So
field
yeah.
of instructional design. It's,
Yeah.
there are so many amazing teachers in the world and they have incredible hearts that want to serve.
Mhm.
And it is like that with instructional design. It's just not taxing in the same way that teaching is taxing. It's, it definitely requires a lot of you. It's not to sound like, I'm not saying that to sound like any of the field slackers or anything like that, but it's
Mhm.
these incredibly good-hearted people that love education and love creating learning materials. And yeah, I love that they gave you such personalized insights and
Yes.
feedback and help. So glad to
Yeah.
hear that.
So, if any sort of transition you want to do, like, start immersing yourself in the content, where, start finding the people that like the same, that want to talk about the same things, and, can give you resources. So that was a huge thing that I just started doing. That actually led to, this summer, I actually got some part-time instructional design work. And that was just from reaching out to a stranger on LinkedIn who connected me with somebody else who said, oh yeah, I can, pay you hourly and I'll send you some jobs, and, you can send them back to me and I'll give you feedback. So that was actually the start this summer that I, as my, real experience, which was great because then I was able to use that and use those examples and talk about them in my interviews. So, so then for the position that I just accepted this week, it's actually with a car company. And so the title is, it's a long title.
It's a cool
talent,
title.
Talent and Development Learning Experience Associate. And the job description, I was drawn to the job description because it said like you would be immersed in like all aspects of the learning process. So it said you're going to be doing instructional design, e-learning, webinars, training, project management, maintaining the LMS. And so I was like, wow, this sounds awesome. I'm going to, get a taste of so many different things, which is great. And so, like you mentioned in the interviews, it was exciting because, I still had, a bit of the like imposter syndrome and feeling like, oh, I'm just a teacher and like, what else can I actually do?
Yep.
So I still definitely had those feelings during the interview process. I tried to, of course, be as confident in the interviews as possible and show my strengths. But they specifically mentioned in the interview that, like, oh, we really like hiring teachers because they're usually very creative. And so we really like that you're a teacher. And one of the other girls on the team is a former teacher.
Oh,
So, I
great.
mean, yeah, there are companies out there that are really interested in hiring former teachers. So if you can find those, then you're going to be in good shape.
Definitely, definitely. And the fact that this position is going to have all of those different roles that you referred to with the learning management system,
Mhm.
with training and creating the resources, videos, so much that everything that you referred to, it's going to build your resume and future opportunities so much as well. That's
Yeah.
really exciting.
Yeah. I'm very excited about this opportunity. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, we are really excited for you too. If there is anyone out there who's interested in instructional design or curious about it, and I know for teachers, they're more familiar with the terminology curriculum development or
Hmm.
curriculum design. So if anyone is curious about that or interested, wanting to go this direction, and they're sitting on the fence with a course, from your personal experience, what would you tell them or share with them?
I mean, I absolutely, like I said, like I love everything about the course. I felt like, you as a former teacher, where we've been and how to help us get somewhere else. So I felt like, yeah, it was a great deal. It was super beneficial in just helping me learn the terminology and learn the basic skills to start working with the tools and the software. And because, like I said, I got this job. I just accepted this job offer, and I don't have a ton of experience. And I have what I learned from the course. I have some things that I just started creating myself. But just being able to speak the language and to show that you have used the tools in some capacity is a huge benefit when you're actually in interviews and you're talking about these things, because they're going to ask you those questions about what you've created and what you're comfortable using. And so even if you're not super skilled in it yet, just knowing that you've tried it and you've kind of been there is really, really beneficial. So
That's
take
so
the course.
great. Hey, thank you for sharing. Yeah, for sharing that and your
Yes.
personal experience with it, but also your example of having personal initiative, that you hopped in, that you were looking around for opportunities, that you
Yeah.
heard of one, that you took it. This hasn't been very many months of a process. How long was it from starting the course to landing this job?
I think I started the course in June, and I got the first interview for this job at the end of August. But it was a very long interview process. I interviewed with a lot of different people, so it was over multiple weeks.
Yeah.
And now, we're almost at the end of September, and I have the job offer. So yeah, I mean, it was a matter of months. And like I said, I'd kind of set this goal for myself and knew this was the path I wanted to take. So yeah, I was applying every day and working on my portfolio and just doing everything that I could to really jump right in.
I love hearing that. And just thinking about it, I'm like, okay, that's 4 months. That's
Mm-hmm.
less time than it takes for people to prepare and apply to grad school and then hear back from grad school, let alone the tuition and multiple years to do a degree in this. And
Yeah.
then they have to do months of job searching after they graduate.
Yeah.
So way to
And the
expedite it.
thing, thank you. And I mean, I knew for myself that if I were to teach this fall and kind of, um, slow down this process, I know for some people, like they want to, they want to plan very far in advance and they say, I'm going to take this course and, over the next year kind of transition or something, which is awesome if that's the path that you want to take. But I knew for me, if I started teaching this fall, that like I said, I was moving, so I was going to be in a new school, new grade, probably, all that stuff was going to be new. It was going to be really time consuming. Obviously, COVID stuff on top of that this
Yeah.
year would have made it even more stressful and time consuming. So I just knew that I would kind of be immersed in all of that, and I wouldn't have a lot of energy in the evenings to commit to instructional design. So for me, I knew that I needed to just commit and go for it to
Yeah.
make it happen. So
Good for you. Yeah.
yeah.
Definitely teaching and then trying to do all of this on top of it can be tricky, right? With finding
Yeah.
a job.
Yeah.
So
And like the in one of the interviews, one of the HR guys he asked me some sort of question like, I don't know if it was a regret that I had from the last year or something like that. But I think I mentioned that like I didn't ask for more opportunities to like present for professional development or something like that. And he asked why I didn't do that. And I said, well, I didn't have a clear goal, honestly, at that time for, like instructional design. If I knew I wanted to go into instructional design, I would have started asking for those opportunities. So for people who do want to say, okay, I'm going to take the next year to do this, then I think that is helpful because then you can start, asking for opportunities that are going to help you land an instructional design job. Whereas, I didn't have that. So,
yeah.
but it
And
worked
I
out.
think it makes sense that you didn't have it where it wasn't really on your radar, you know?
Yeah, I wasn't thinking about
Yeah.
it.
Like you said, you'd never even heard of instructional design.
Yeah.
And for teachers that look for curriculum development, like there are
Hmm.
so many more jobs listed under instructional design. The roles, the responsibilities, it's like same thing, different vernacular, like different just vocab in different
Yeah.
areas.
And that
So
was a huge thing that I realized over these past few months too, that, because like I said before, I never found any jobs that seemed to pique my interest. Whereas, once I discovered instructional design, I started seeing all these other kind of titles that, like learning curriculum developer or content developer or something. So there's so many other job titles that have all these aspects involved in them that I just didn't know how to look for before either. So,
right.
yeah,
The field is still kind of figuring out how to refer to itself. Learning
yeah,
experience design, learning design, and there are tiny, tiny differences with some things and big differences with other things. But yeah, there's so many different aspects of it. But I do love that the
yeah.
course exposes people to not just the vocab and
Hmm.
the skills, but that people really leave the course having the portfolio, having experience,
Hmm.
and anyway, I'm
Yeah.
just so glad that
And they also said in the interview, like they were impressed that I had a portfolio, and they said, we're not even looking at resumes submitted without a portfolio. So
good.
it is a big deal to have it and show it, even if, like I said, I wasn't super confident in everything that I had in it. It's like they're looking for it and they want to see that you're doing something. So
Excellent. Well,
yeah.
thank you for sharing your personal experience, your story, and your example. Really, really appreciate it. And I'm so excited for you with this new job. Such a
Thank
cool
you.
title, but not just the title, the many different things that you're going to get to experience and learn and grow. And yeah, just so much for your future
Yes.
and different opportunities as well. So we'll have to
Thank
have
you
you
so
back
much.
on and you can share all about it and how it's all going in the future
Yeah.
as well.
Once I actually get into it, I can share what it's like. So
Excellent. Okay. Thank you again. Appreciate it so much.
thank you so much, Allie.